Welcome to our latest Wandering Walks of Wonder Museum tour. Today we're headed to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. This museum chronologically charts the progress of the Negro Leagues with information placards as well as interactive exhibits. As we go through the museum, we'll see walls lined with pictures of players, owners, and officials of the Negro Leagues Baseball from the Negro National League of 1920 through the Negro American League, which lasted until 1962. As we progress through the exhibit, we'll move forward in time and learn more about the history of black baseball. The Negro Leagues were professional baseball leagues in the United States that comprised teams of African Americans. The term can be used broadly to include all professional black teams, or more specifically to refer to the 7 successful leagues that started in 1920, often called the Negro Major Leagues. In the late 19th century, the baseball color line was established, excluding African Americans from participating in professional leagues. The first attempt at a black league, the National Colored Baseball League, was organized as a minor league in 1887 but folded after only 2 weeks due to low attendance. After decades of mostly independent play by various teams, the first Negro National League was founded in 1920. Over the next 30 years, 7 major leagues emerged. Baseball featuring African American players became professionalized by the 1870s. Bud Fowler, the first known professional black baseball player, appeared in several games with the Chelsea, Massachusetts club in April of 1878 and later pitched for the Lynn, Massachusetts team in the International Association. Moses Fleetwood Walker and his brother Wilberforce Walker were the first black players in the major leagues, both playing for the 1884 Toledo Blue Stockings in the American Association, as well which was considered a major league at the time. In 1886, Frank Grant joined the Buffalo Bisons of the International League, hitting a whopping .340, the third highest in that league. Several other black players joined the International League the following season, including pitchers George Stovey and Robert Higgins, but by 1888, blacks were barred from the league and other high minor leagues. The first nationally known black professional baseball team was the Cuban Giants, founded in 1885 through the merger of 3 clubs, the Keystone Athletics of Philadelphia, the Orions of Philadelphia, and the Manhattans of Washington, D.C. Their success led to the creation of the National Colored Baseball League in 1887, which has become known as the first Negro League. Organized as a minor league team with 6 teams, it quickly folded due to poor attendance and financial instability. The Cuban Giants' popularity spurred the formation of many similar named teams such as the Cuban X-Giants, the Genuine Cuban Giants, the Columbia Giants, and the Brooklyn Royal Giants. Despite the name, these teams were composed of African Americans and aimed to appeal to white patrons. From 1899, several actual Cuban teams, including the All Cubans, the Cuban Stars, and the New York Cubans, played in North America, some joining the Negro Leagues and including white Cuban players. Black players on white minor league teams faced severe verbal and physical abuse. The Compromise of 1877 removed barriers to the enactment of Jim Crow laws, allowing legal discrimination against blacks. On July 14, 1887, Cap Anson of the Chicago White Stockings refused to play against the Newark Giants of the International League if black players Fleet Walker and George Stovey were present. This led to a league-wide ban on future contracts with black players. In 1888, the Middle States League admitted 2 all-black teams, the Cuban Giants and their rivals, the New York Gorhams. Despite their rivalry, they formed a traveling team, the Colored All-Americans, to make money while fulfilling league commitments. By 1892, the Cuban Giants were the only black team in the East still operating full-time, having returned to their independent barnstorming roots. In 1888, Frank Leland enlisted Chicago's black businessmen to sponsor the Black Amateur Union Baseball Club. With support from the city's government, Leland secured a permit and a lease to play at Southside Park, a 5,000-seat facility. His team eventually turned professional and became the Chicago Unions. After leaving the Gorhams, Bud Fowler joined a team in Findlay, Ohio. While playing in Adrian, Michigan, he helped two local businessmen start the Page Fence Giants, a team financed by the Page Woven Wire Fence Company. The Page Fence Giants became a barnstorming powerhouse throughout the Midwest, setting a successful prototype for black baseball. The Page Fence Giants folded after the 1898 season due to financial issues. Alvin H. Garrett, a black businessman, and John W. Patterson, the left fielder for the Page Fence Giants, reformed the team as the Columbia Giants. However, they folded in 1901 due to a lack of a playing venue. Leland bought the Giants in 1905, merging them with his Unions to form the Leland Giants, although no former Giant players were on that roster. The Philadelphia Giants, owned by Walter Schlittler, rose to prominence in 1903 but lost to the Cuban X Giants in the Colored Championship. Andrew Rube Foster, here we'll hear about quite a bit more as we go through the history, was a young pitcher at the time that led the Giants to victory. Schlichter hired Foster in 1904, leading the Philadelphia Giants to defeat the Cuban X Giants in a rematch. Foster left the team in 1907 to manage the Leland Giants. Nat Strong, a white businessman, became a leading promoter of black baseball on the East Coast by leveraging his ownership of New York City baseball fields. He eventually bought and turned the Brooklyn Royal Giants into a barnstorming team. When Foster joined the Leland Giants, he took control of on-field activities and bookings, transforming the team into a dominant force. He emphasized aggressive play strategies and improved pitching mechanics, also negotiating a higher percentage of gate receipts for the team. By 1909, a conflict over control led to Foster leaving Leland and retaining the rights to the Leland Giants name after a court battle. Leland started a new team, the Chicago Giants, while Foster's Leland Giants began encroaching on Strong's territory. Foster advocated for an all-black league, insisting that black teams should be owned by black men, directly competing with Strong. In 1910, Foster renamed his team the Chicago American Giants to broaden their appeal. J.L. Wilkinson also started the All-Nations traveling team, which later became the renowned Kansas City Monarchs. The United States' entry into World War I in 1917 accelerated the migration of blacks from the South to the North, creating a larger and much more affluent fan base. By 1919, Foster was ready to start a Negro League Baseball League. So on February 13th and 14th of 1920, talks began in Kansas City, Missouri to establish the National League and its governing bodies. Those talks occurred just about a block away from here in a YMCA building that's near the museum. The league initially comprised 8 teams: the Chicago American Giants, the Chicago Giants, the Cuban Stars, the Dayton Marcos, the Detroit Stars, the Indianapolis ABCs, the Kansas City Monarchs, and the St. Louis Giants. Foster was named league president, controlling all aspects of the league, including player assignments, schedules, as well as equipment, and taking a 5% cut of all gate receipts as the league's booking agent. As we go through the museum, we're now looking at the golden age of the Negro Leagues, starting in the 1920s. On May 20th, 1920, the Indianapolis A's defeated Charles Joe Green's Chicago Giants in the inaugural game of the Negro National League at Washington Park in Indianapolis. However, the Chicago race riot of 1919 had left the National Guard occupying the Giants' home field, which was then called Shorelines Park, formerly called Southside Park, forcing Rube Foster to cancel all home games for nearly a month, which posed a significant challenge to his new league. Meanwhile, the Negro Southern League was founded on March 2, 1920 in Atlanta, Georgia. In 1921, it joined Foster's National Association of Colored Professional Baseball Clubs, gaining protection from player raids like any NNL team. Foster expanded the league's reach by admitting John Connors' Atlantic City Bacharach Giants as an associate member, encroaching on Nat Strong's territory. Connors, in gratitude, raided Ed Bolden's Hilldale Daisies team, pushing Bolden to align with Strong. However, Bolden soon joined Foster's league as an associate member. On December 16, 1922, Bolden and Strong formed the Eastern Colored League to rival Foster's NNL with teams such as the Atlantic City Bacharach Giants, the Baltimore Black Sox, the Brooklyn Royal Giants, the New York Cuban Stars, and the New York Lincoln Giants. The NNL struggled with continuity, losing and replacing teams frequently between 1921 and 1923, sometimes promoting entire teams from the Negro Southern League. Foster and Bolden eventually agreed to an annual World Series starting in 1924, despite the leagues being disorganized throughout the 1920s. Teams often played uneven numbers of games and skipped league matchups for more lucrative non-league games, and players frequently would jump between teams for better pay, causing much instability in the leagues. In 1925, the St. Louis Stars emerged as a formidable team in the NNL thanks to players like Cool Papa Bell and Willie Wells. Rube Foster's leadership ended in 1926 due to a gas leak incident and subsequent erratic behavior, leading to his commitment to an asylum in 1927. William C. Houston succeeded him as league president. Ed Bolden faced similar pressures, committing himself to a hospital in 1927, leading to the collapse of the Eastern League and the end of the NNL-ECL World Series. The American Negro League was formed in 1928 to replace the ECL with a similar lineup of teams, including the addition of the Homestead Grays. However, the ANL lasted only one season. The Great Depression hit, causing the NNL to fold after the 1931 season, and some teams joined the Negro Southern League, the only remaining Negro League in the 1930s. Strong independent clubs like the Kansas City Monarchs did survive, often challenging major league teams with innovative players and tactics. On March 26, 1932, the Chicago Defender announced the end of the Negro National League, marking the closing of a significant chapter in black baseball history. Just as Negro League Baseball seemed to be at its lowest point and was about to fade into history, Cumberland Posey and his Homestead Grays intervened. In January 1932, Posey, along with Charlie Walker, John Rosnick, George Rossiter, John Drew, Lloyd Thompson, and L.R. Williams founded the East-West League. This new league included teams from 8 cities: Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Detroit, Baltimore, Cleveland, Newark, New York, and Washington, D.C. However, by May 1932, the Detroit Wolves were struggling, and Posey continued to fund them to keep the team alive. By June, the Wolves had disbanded, and the rest of the teams, except for the Grays, were also struggling, leading Posey to dissolve the league. Meanwhile, across town, Gus Greenlee, a reputed gangster and numbers runner, had just purchased the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Initially interested in baseball as a means to launder money from his numbers games, Greenlee became passionate about the sport after observing Posey's success with the Homestead Grays. On August 6, 1931, the great Satchel Paige made his debut for the Crawfords. Recognizing the marketing potential of having Paige on his team, Greenlee invested $100,000 in a new ballpark, Greenlee Field. On opening day, April 30th, 1932, the Battery featured 2 of the most iconic figures in black baseball, pitcher Satchel Paige and catcher Josh Gibson. In 1933, leveraging the popularity of his Crawfords, Greenlee decided to start a new Negro League. So in February of 1933, he and delegates from 6 other teams met at Greenlee's Crawford's Grill to establish the National Organization of Professional Baseball Clubs, reviving the name of the disbanded Negro National League. This new league would include the Pittsburgh Crawfords, the Columbus Bluebirds, the Indianapolis ABCs, the Baltimore Black Sox, Brooklyn Royal Giants, Cole's American Giants, and the Nashville Elite Giants. Greenlee also innovated the concept of a Negro League All-Star Game modeled after Major League Baseball's All-Star Game. However, unlike the MLB, where sports writers selected players, Greenlee's version allowed fans to vote for the participants. The first East-West All-Star Game was held on September 10, 1933 at Comiskey Park in Chicago, drawing a crowd of 20,000 spectators. This event highlighted the popularity and talent within the Negro Leagues and became a cornerstone of black baseball culture. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, propelled the United States into World War II. Black America, remembering the exclusion they faced during World War I, resolved not to be left out of the economic boom and social unification accompanying the war effort. Like the major leagues, the Negro Leagues saw many of their stars miss one or more seasons due to military service. While many players were over 30 and thus considered, quote, too old for service, some notable players who served include Monty Irvin, Larry Doby, and Leon Day of Newark, Ford Smith, Hank Thompson, Joe Green, Willard Brown, and Buck O'Neill of Kansas City, and Lyman Bostock of Birmingham, and Lick Carlson and Howard Easterling of Homestead. Despite these absences, the Negro Leagues thrived during the war. Millions of black Americans employed in war industries and earning good wages filled league games in every city. The business was so successful that promoter Abe Saperstein, renowned for the Harlem Globetrotters, launched the Negro Midwest League, a minor league akin to the Negro Southern League. The Negro World Series was revived in 1942, featuring the champions of the Eastern Negro National League and the Midwestern Negro American League. This series would continue until 1948, with the NNL winning 4 championships and the NAL 3. In 1946, Saperstein partnered with Olympic champion Jesse Owens to create another Negro League, the West Coast Baseball Association. Saperstein served as league president, while Owens was vice president and owner of the league's Portland Rosebuds franchise. But despite their efforts, the WCBA disbanded after only 2 months. These wartime efforts and the resurgence of the Negro Leagues during World War II showcased the resilience and determination of black baseball in America, marking a significant period in the history of the sport. Judge Kennesaw M. Landis, the first commissioner of Major League Baseball, staunchly opposed the integration of the major leagues. During his 24-year tenure, he blocked multiple attempts to integrate the games. One notable incident involved Bill Veek's plan in 1943 to purchase the Philadelphia Phillies and fill the roster with Negro League stars. Landis, along with the National League president Ford Frick, thwarted Veek's plan, favoring a bid by William D. Cox instead. Landis's death in 1944 led to the appointment of Happy Chandler as his successor. Unlike Landis, Chandler was supportive of integration, even at the potential cost of his position. Chandler stated in his biography that he could not, in good conscience, tell black players they could not play baseball with whites after they had fought for their country, even though they had served in segregated units. In March 1945, MLB created the Major League Committee on Baseball Integration, which included Joseph P. Rainey, Larry McPhail, and Branch Rickey. McPhail, an outspoken critic of integration, stalled the committee's efforts, leading to it to never convene. Rickey, meanwhile, began scouting for the right candidate to break the color barrier. His search eventually narrowed down to Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb, and Jackie Robinson. On August 28, 1945, Jackie Robinson met with Rickey in Brooklyn. Rickey subjected Robinson to a test by hurling racial slurs and abuse that Robinson would likely face in the majors. Robinson's composed response convinced Rickey that he was the right man for the job. Robinson signed a contract that included a clause freeing him from any obligation to Negro Leagues, setting a precedent that would later weaken the Negro Leagues commercially. To divert attention from his integration plans, Rickey involved himself in Gus Greenlee's new United States League. Greenlee, a former Negro National League team owner, started the league in 1945 to compete with the existing Negro Leagues. Rickey's participation appeared to be an effort to clean up black baseball. Once his Robinson plan was in place, Rickey withdrew from the league, which folded after the 1946 season. In 1945, the New York State legislature passed the Fair Employment Practices Act following the Quinn Ives Act, which banned discrimination in hiring. Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia of New York City also formed the Mayor's Commission on Baseball to study Major League integration. These developments pressured Rickey to announce Robinson's signing sooner than planned. On October 23, 1945, Montreal's Royals president Hector Racine announced Robinson's signing. In early 1946, Rickey signed 4 more black players: Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb, John Wright, and Roy Partlow. These were introduced with much less fanfare, though, than Robinson. Jackie Robinson's debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers in April 1947 marked the beginning of Major League integration. This eventually led to a decline in interest to the Negro League Baseball. Promising black players were now signed by Major League teams, often ignoring existing contracts with Negro League clubs. Negro League owners faced a dilemma. Protecting their interests could be seen as hindering players' advancement to the majors. By 1948, both the Dodgers and Bill Veek's Cleveland Indians had also integrated. Ironically, the Negro Leagues themselves integrated during this period. In 1946, Eddie Klepp pitched for the Cleveland Buckeyes, becoming the first white American to play in the Negro Leagues. Despite strong opposition from most MLB owners, Rickey's efforts prevailed. Happy Chandler's decision to support integration might have contributed to his removal in 1951 when he was replaced by Ford Frick. But the integration of baseball marked a significant turning point that eventually would lead to the decline of Negro Leagues as a commercial entity. As the integration of Major League Baseball progressed, the Negro Leagues faced an existential crisis. There were suggestions to incorporate the Negro Leagues into what was then known as organized baseball as development leagues for black players, but this idea was ultimately dismissed because it contradicted the overarching goal of full integration. Consequently, the Negro Leagues, once among the largest and most successful black-owned business ventures, was allowed to die. After the NNL's dissolution, the Negro American League remained the only major Negro League. However, by 1950, it had diminished to minor league status. The league struggled to maintain its competitive edge and financial stability, playing its last game in 1958. The final Negro League All-Star Game was held in 1962. By 1966, the Indianapolis Clowns were the only Negro League still playing. Over time, the Clowns transitioned from competitive baseball to performing exhibition games with a comedic flair, similar to the Harlem Globetrotters in basketball. The shift marked the end of the Negro Leagues as a serious sporting enterprise, with the Clowns continuing to play exhibition games into the 1980s. The decline of the Negro Leagues was a direct consequence of the integration of Major League Baseball. While the demise of the Negro Leagues marked the end of an era, their legacy lived on through the players who broke barriers and changed the landscape of American sports. The integration of MLB not only opened opportunities for black players, but also paved the way for a more inclusive and diverse future in professional sports. one of the great players of the Negro Leagues, as well as a founder of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, is Buck O'Neil. Here, this exhibit takes a look at the life of Buck, as well as includes a couple different unique items inside. On November 3rd, 2012, the family of Buck O'Neil donated 2 items to the museum in honor of what would have been his 101st birthday. O'Neill's Presidential Medal of Freedom, which was awarded posthumously by President George W. Bush, was donated, and also given to the museum was a miniature replica of the Buck O'Neil statue, which is displayed at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, where Buck O'Neil is a Hall of Famer. The single most impressive exhibit here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is this Field of Legends. Separated from the visitor at the entrance by the chicken wire, we now see it at the end of the tour in full. Here we walk onto a field adorned with nearly life-size bronze statues of 12 figures from Negro League history. Crouching behind home plate is Gibson, one of the most prolific hitters in baseball history, a man who allegedly hit over 80 home runs in one season. At first base is another Baseball Hall of Famer, Buck Leonard, a teammate of Gibson's with the Homestead Grays. At second base is John Lloyd, Judy Johnson's monitors shortstop, while Ray Danridge holds down third base.
No, go ahead.
In the outfield are Cool Papa Bell, Oscar Charleston, and Leon Day. On the mound is perhaps the most famous Negro Leaguer of all time, Satchel Paige, who became a rookie in the major leagues at the age of 42 in 1948. Also at the plate is Martin Diego, the only man to be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 3 countries, Mexico, Cuba, and the United States. Other statues that we see here include Rube Foster, the founder of the first Negro National League that we saw and heard about a little bit earlier in the tour, as well as Buck O'Neil, a former Kansas City Monarch and member of the board of the museum until his October 6, 2006 death. I hope you've enjoyed this Wandering Walks of Wonder Museum tour here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you on our next Wandering Walks of Wonder walking tour, museum tour, or campus tour. Take care now. Bye-bye.